You probably noticed it. The people who used to light up every room they walked into are now nowhere to be found. The ones who seem to understand life on a deeper level have gone silent. And if you're one of them, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Something strange is happening in our world right now. The people who've spent years working on themselves, the ones who've had those profound realizations about life, the spiritually aware individuals who see through the games society plays, they're stepping back, they're disappearing from social circles, unfollowing the noise, and choosing solitude over superficial connections. And before you think this is about being antisocial or running away from life, let me tell you, it's actually the complete opposite. What's happening is a natural evolution of consciousness. And understanding it might change how you see your own journey. Here's what most people don't understand. When someone goes through a genuine spiritual awakening, when they start seeing reality for what it actually is rather than what they've been told it should be, something fundamental shifts inside them. They can't go back to pretending. They can't engage in the same meaningless small talk. They can't fake interest in drama that doesn't matter. And this creates a massive problem. Society runs on agreement. It runs on everyone playing the same game, following the same rules, wanting the same things. We're supposed to chase career success, accumulate possessions, seek validation through likes and comments, compete for status, and constantly worry about what others think of us. The entire social structure depends on people believing these things matter. But what happens when someone wakes up from this collective dream? What happens when they realize that most of what we stress about is completely made up? That the rat race leads nowhere? That true peace comes from within, not from external achievements? They become incompatible with the system. They become a glitch in the matrix. And here's where it gets really interesting. Society doesn't know what to do with these people. Friends and family start asking what's wrong. Co-workers think they've become weird or distant. People who used to be close suddenly feel threatened by their presence because awakened individuals reflect back everything that's unconscious in others. They mirror the parts of people that are still asleep, still chasing illusions, still trapped in patterns they don't even realize they're stuck in. So what do awakened people do? They withdraw. Not out of superiority or judgment, but out of necessity. Because staying in environments that drain their energy, that pull them back into unconsciousness, that demand they shrink themselves to make others comfortable, it becomes impossible. The cost is too high. The unbearable weight of seeing through the illusion. Let me paint you a picture of what this actually feels like. Imagine you've been watching a movie your entire life, completely absorbed in the plot, believing everything on screen is real. Then suddenly, someone pulls back the curtain and shows you it's just actors on a set, reading lines someone else wrote. You see the cameras, the crew, the fake backdrops. Now try going back to watching that same movie and caring about the drama between the characters. You can't. The spell is broken. This is what happens to people who wake up spiritually. They see through the constructed nature of so much of what society takes seriously. They recognize that most conversations are just people repeating ideas they've absorbed without questioning. They notice how much energy goes into maintaining images that aren't real. They observe the exhausting dance of ego, where everyone's trying to prove they're important, successful, happy, or better than someone else. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't pretend to be excited about things that feel hollow. You can't engage in gossip that tears people down. You can't participate in the constant comparison game that social media has turned into a competitive sport. None of it feels authentic anymore. But here's what makes this even more challenging. When you stop playing the game, people notice. They feel it. And instead of asking themselves why they're so invested in these empty pursuits, they often project their discomfort onto you. You become the problem. You're too serious now. You've changed. You're no fun anymore. You think you're better than everyone else. The truth is much simpler. You've just stopped pretending. And that makes people uncomfortable because your authenticity reminds them of their own masks. So awakened people start pulling back from social situations that feel fake. They decline vidast to events that feel like performances. They limit their time on platforms designed to keep them addicted and insecure. They create distance from relationships that exist only on the surface, not because they're antisocial, but because they're protecting the clarity they've worked so hard to achieve. This withdrawal isn't depression, though it might look like it from the outside. It's not giving up on life. It's actually the opposite. It's choosing to engage with life more deeply, more intentionally, more consciously. But that deeper engagement often requires less quantity and more quality. Fewer interactions, but more meaningful ones. Less noise, more silence. Less doing, more being. The death of small talk and surface-level connections. There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes with spiritual awakening, and it's not the kind most people understand. It's not about being alone. It's about being surrounded by people and feeling completely because the level of conversation never goes beyond the surface. Think about the typical social interaction. Someone asks how you're doing. You say you're fine. They talk about the weather or what they watched on television or some celebrity drama, or they complain about their job in the same way they've complained for years without ever changing anything. Then the conversation ends, and both people walk away having shared nothing real, nothing vulnerable, nothing true. For someone who's spiritually awake, these interactions become almost painful. Not because they judge the other person, but because they're starving for genuine connection. They want to talk about what really matters, about the nature of existence, about how we create our own suffering, about the difference between living consciously and sleepwalking through life, about real struggles and real growth and real transformation. But try bringing up these topics at a dinner party and watch how quickly people get uncomfortable. Watch how fast they change the subject or make a joke to break the tension. Deep conversations about meaning and purpose and consciousness threaten the comfortable numbness most people prefer to maintain. So awakened individuals face a choice: either dumb themselves down, hide their insights, and engage in conversations that feel like they're speaking a foreign language, just to fit in, or be honest about where they're at, and risk being labeled as too intense, too weird, too much. Most choose the latter. They'd rather be alone than feel lonely while surrounded by people. They'd rather have one real conversation a month than 100 fake ones every week. Quality over quantity becomes the operating principle in all relationships. And this is why they disappear from social circles. The Friday night hangouts where everyone gets drunk and complains about their lives. The group chats filled with memes and gossip. The networking events where everyone's trying to use each other for personal gain. The family gatherings where the same dysfunctional patterns play out year after year, with no one ever addressing the elephant in the room. Awakened people can't do it anymore. Their tolerance for inauthenticity drops to zero. They'd rather spend their time in nature, in meditation, in creative pursuits, in solitude, or with the rare few people who can meet them at their depth. This doesn't make them better than anyone else, it just makes them different. And different is lonely in a world that rewards conformity. Energy vampires and the necessity of boundaries. Here's something nobody talks about enough. When you become more conscious, more present, more grounded in your true self, you start operating at a different frequency. And that frequency attracts attention, not all of it positive. People who are lost, confused, stuck in victim mentality, or addicted to drama, can sense your light, and unconsciously, they move toward it, hoping some of it will rub off on them. But here's the problem. If they're not willing to do their own inner work, they don't want to rise to your level. They want to pull you down to theirs. This happens in subtle ways. A friend who only calls when they need something, but is never available when you're going through something. A family member who dismisses your growth, and constantly reminds you of who you used to be. A coworker who unloads all their problems on you but never takes any advice or makes any changes. A romantic partner who loves the comfort you provide, but resents the mirror you hold up to their unconscious patterns. These are what some people call energy vampires, though that term might sound dramatic. Really, they're just people who haven't learned to generate their own inner peace, so they try to borrow yours. And if you let them, they will drain you completely. Awakened individuals learn this lesson the hard way. They try to help everyone. They give and give and give, thinking that sharing their light will wake others up. But you can't wake someone who wants to keep sleeping. You can't save someone who isn't ready to save themselves. And the attempt to do so will exhaust you, dim your light, and potentially pull you back into unconsciousness. So boundaries become essential. Not walls, but healthy boundaries that protect your energy, your peace, your clarity. This means saying no more often. It means limiting contact with people who consistently leave you feeling depleted. It means choosing not to engage with every argument, every drama, every crisis that isn't yours to solve. And when awakened people start setting these boundaries, they're often accused of being selfish, cold, or uncaring. But it's not selfishness to protect your well-being. It's not cold to recognize that you can't pour from an empty cup. It's not uncaring to understand that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their choices, rather than constantly rescuing them. The disappearance of spiritually awake people from society is often a direct result of boundary setting. They remove themselves from toxic environments, draining relationships, and soul-sucking situations. They create sacred space around themselves where only genuine, conscious, growth-oriented connections are allowed. This looks like isolation to those on the outside, but for the awakened individual, it's liberation. The collapse of old identities and social roles. Every society assigns roles. The successful career person, the devoted parent, the loyal friend, the life of the party, the helper, the rebel, the peacemaker. We learn these roles early, and we perform them throughout our lives, often without realizing we're acting. Spiritual awakening shatters these roles. It reveals them for what they are: costumes we've been wearing, scripts we've been following, identities we've built that have nothing to do with who we actually are beneath all the conditioning. When someone wakes up to this, they can no longer play the part they've been playing. The successful career person realizes their job doesn't define them, and that chasing promotions and status symbols feels empty. The people pleaser recognizes they've been abandoning themselves to make others happy and can't do it anymore. The person who always had to be strong and together admits they're struggling and needs support. The rebel discovers their rebellion was just another form of conformity, reacting against rather than acting from their true nature. This identity collapse is terrifying and liberating at the same time. Terrifying because you lose the familiar sense of self. You don't know who you are anymore if you're not the role you've been playing. Liberating because you finally have the chance to discover who you actually are beneath all the masks. But here's what makes this relevant to why awakened people disappear. When you stop playing your assigned role, the people around you get confused and uncomfortable. They liked you better when you were predictable, when you stayed in your box, when you fulfilled the function they needed you to fulfill in their lives. Your parents might struggle when you stopped being the child who always did what they expected. Your friends might distance themselves when you're no longer available to party every weekend or engage in the same activities. Your partner might feel threatened when you start growing in ways they're not ready for. Your employer might not know what to do with you when you stop defining yourself by your productivity. The social pressure to go back to your old role can be intense. People will tell you they miss the old you. They'll say you've changed, and they won't mean it as a compliment. They'll try to shame you, guilt you, or manipulate you back into the box they need you to occupy. And this is precisely why spiritually awake people withdraw, because staying in situations where they're expected to be someone they're not, where their growth is seen as a problem, where their authenticity threatens the status quo, it's suffocating. It's impossible to maintain spiritual clarity while constantly being pressured to shrink back into outdated versions of yourself. So they leave. They leave jobs that don't align with their values. They end relationships that require them to play a character. They move to new places where no one has expectations of who they should be. They create lives that allow them to exist as their authentic selves, even if that means walking away from everything familiar. This isn't running away, it's running towards something real, the emergence of a different way of living. Now here's where this whole thing gets really interesting, because what looks like disappearing is actually a transformation. Awakened people aren't checking out of life. They're checking out of a particular version of life that doesn't serve consciousness. They're not becoming hermits who hate humanity. They're becoming selective about where they place their attention and energy. They're not rejecting connection. They're rejecting false connection in favor of real intimacy. They're not giving up on the world. They're refusing to participate in the unconscious patterns that keep the world stuck in suffering. And many of them are creating something new. New ways of working that prioritize meaning over money. Though they understand money as necessary. New ways of relating that honor authenticity over social convention. New communities built around shared values rather than proximity or obligation. New lifestyles that integrate spiritual practice into daily life rather than compartmentalizing it. This is the quiet revolution that's happening while mainstream society continues its frantic pace, chasing the same goals, playing the same games, drowning in the same distractions. There's a growing number of people who've simply opted out. They're living differently, working differently, relating differently, being different. Some are building intentional communities, some are homesteading or living off-grid, some are creating online businesses that allow location independence. Some are downsizing their lives to reduce dependence on a system they no longer believe in. Some are teaching, writing, making art, or offering healing in various forms. Some are simply living quiet lives of deep presence and contentment. What they have in common is consciousness. They're awake, they're aware, they're intentional. They've stopped sleepwalking through life and started creating lives that reflect their values and understanding. And yes, many of them are hard to find. They're not on social media announcing their every move. They're not at the typical social events. They're not seeking attention or validation. They're just living quietly, consciously, peacefully. But they're out there. And if you're someone who's going through this same process, who feels like you don't fit in anywhere anymore, who's tired of pretending and hungry for something real, you need to know you're not alone. There are others like you. They're just not in the places you used to look. So here's the real question. If you're feeling this pull to withdraw, to disappear from the noise and chaos and unconsciousness of modern society, what do you do? First, understand that this is natural. It's not a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that something's very right. You're evolving. You're outgrowing environments and relationships that no longer match your frequency. And that's exactly what's supposed to happen. Second, don't fight it. Don't force yourself to stay in situations that drain you just because you think you should, or because you're afraid of what others will think, or because you're worried about being alone. Trust your inner guidance. If something feels off, it probably is. Your discomfort in certain environments isn't a flaw, it's wisdom. Third, be gentle with yourself through this transition. Losing old identities, old relationships, old ways of being, it's a kind of death. And death, even when it leads to rebirth, involves grief. Let yourself feel it. Let yourself mourn what's ending, but also recognize that something new is beginning. Fourth, start creating what you need. If you can't find the connections you're looking for, be the kind of person you wish to meet and trust that like attracts like. If you can't find work that feels meaningful, start exploring alternatives. If your current environment doesn't support your growth, begin planning your exit, even if it takes time. And finally, remember that withdrawal isn't the end goal. It's a phase. It's the cocoon stage of the transformation. You're not meant to isolate forever. You're meant to go inward, do the deep work, integrate your realizations, and then eventually emerge with gifts to share with the world. Because that's the paradox. Awakened people disappear from society not because they have nothing to offer, but because they have so much to offer that they need to protect and cultivate it first. They need to get clear, get grounded, get strong in their truth before they can bring that truth into the world in a way that actually makes a difference. The quiet disappearance of spiritually awake people from society isn't a problem to be solved. It's a natural process of conscious evolution. These individuals aren't broken, antisocial, or superior. They're simply at a different stage of development, one that requires solitude, introspection, and distance from unconscious patterns. They've seen through the illusions that keep most people trapped in cycles of suffering. They've recognized that true fulfillment doesn't come from external achievements but from inner peace. They've understood that authentic connection is rare and precious, worth far more than 1,000 superficial relationships. They've learned to protect their energy from those who would drain it, and they've had the courage to let old identities die so new ones can be born. This withdrawal is temporary for most. It's the inward journey that precedes the outward expression. The silence before the song, the darkness before the dawn. What emerges from this chrysalis stage are individuals who've integrated their awakening, who can move through the world without being consumed by it, who can maintain their clarity while engaging with others, who can offer genuine wisdom and presence because they've done the work on themselves first. If you're going through this, know that you're exactly where you need to be. The loneliness is real, but it's not permanent. The confusion about who you are now is natural, but clarity will come. The sense of not belonging anywhere is uncomfortable, but it's creating space for you to find or create where you truly do belong. You haven't lost yourself, you're finding yourself. And sometimes that requires disappearing from everything you've known so you can discover what's real. Subscribe if this resonated with you.